Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a an incredibly provocative and radically unique philosophical essay by a writer named Su Feng. Now, we're not here to endorse these ideas, but rather to break them down and explore a truly counterintuitive perspective on human connection. The essay is titled Special Relationships Between People Will Ruin Their Lives. It's a bold, honestly jarring claim, and the way the author builds this argument is just absolutely fascinating.
So, the author hooks us right out of the gate with a question I know we've all asked ourselves at some point. Where has our time gone? Seriously, just think about your own life for a second. We rush from task to task, meeting to meeting, and we're constantly exhausted by the sheer overwhelming busyness of modern existence. The text forces us to just hit pause and contemplate this exhaustion. What on earth are we doing in this world if we're just endlessly hurrying?
To really ground this feeling of lost time, the essay leans into these deep, almost melancholic reflections. It reminds us that when flowers fall and beauty becomes old, death separates them forever. It's heavy, right? The author uses several poetic, historical lines exactly like this one to establish a foundation of lost youth and the fleeting nature of life. We're reminded of the inevitable march of time and how easily we lose our prime years to worry and endless toil. And because we're just so caught up in that endless grind, the text argues we're completely missing out on the serene moments of the natural world. How many times have we actually stopped to quietly watch a sunrise or a sunset? When was the last time you stood in a courtyard under a full moon just to listen to the wind and the insects? We miss the sprouting grass, the blooming willows. We failed to melt our body and soul into nature to experience a true oneness with all things. I think most of us can strongly agree with this premise. We're entirely too busy and disconnected from the serene beauty right in front of us. So what exactly is pulling us away from all this peace and quiet? The author uses a Socratic questioning method to pivot forcefully to the core problem. Who took away our teenage time? Who made our middle age a period of endless running around? The ultimate question, who killed our youth? We go from these beautiful poetic reflections on nature right into a blunt, demanding search for a culprit. Now, what's really interesting is the author's answer, because it's completely unexpected. The culprit? It isn't capitalism, or smartphones, or modern society. No, the text blames these exact people. Parents, children, grandchildren, husbands, wives, friends, lovers, brothers, sisters, and buddies. The author labels these as special relationships. The very people we love and cherish the most are pinpointed as the exact source of our misery. It is a massive, highly unexpected shift in the narrative.
Which brings us to the actual radical thesis of the essay. The author states that any person who makes you worry, think about day and night, or lose sleep is actively ruining your future. It's an absolute claim. Anyone who makes you hate but whom you cannot rid yourself of, anyone you're emotionally tethered to, is destroying your life. We're remaining totally impartial here, but you really have to appreciate the sheer counterintuitive boldness of this philosophy. It turns our fundamental understanding of love, community, and connection completely upside down.
Let's break down the specific costs the author attributes to these connections. According to the text, these special relationships make our lives miserable and distressed. They force us to be on guard literally day and night, trembling in fear for our loved ones. They drive people to break the law and take immense risks just to provide for or protect their inner circle. They cause an inability to eat or sleep. Notice how sharply these anxiety-inducing consequences contrast with that serene, peaceful nature imagery we talked about earlier. The author's implication is crystal clear. Connection equals chaos. To really hammer this point home, the author throws out this fantastic thought experiment. Think about this carefully. If you lived on an uninhabited island with plenty of food and absolutely no one cared if you lived or died, would you still live the way you do right now? Would you still be running the rat race? It's a striking point, honestly. So much of our daily behavior, our stress, our constant striving is entirely dictated and constrained by social obligations and the invisible chains of our relationships. And this brilliantly illustrates how those invisible chains can literally drag us into ruin. The text compares ancient punishments to modern scandals. In ancient times, there was this brutal punishment called the implication of 9 generations. A young child or a servant would be killed simply because their father or master committed a crime. Why? Simply because of their special relationship. Today, we see what the author calls landslide-style corruption. A provincial governor is arrested, and suddenly everyone associated with him, his family, his friends, are financially ruined and imprisoned. When you're connected, your fate is entirely tethered to the actions of others. The essay even pulls in a really jarring true crime anecdote to brutally illustrate the ultimate danger of romantic bonds. The text asks, "Have you heard the story of a man who travels all the way to Australia just to kill a woman? Why did he do it? Because they had a special relationship." The author uses this extreme real-world example to show how romantic love can warp into a fatal, destructive obsession. Without the relationship, there's no tragedy. So the core mechanism of all this destruction? Shared burdens. Once you form a special bond with someone, the author believes everything about them instantly becomes yours. You're now responsible for their food, clothing, and shelter. You have to bear the weight of their aging, illness, and death, their love and hate, their violations of the law, their nightmares and pains. All of their frustrations become intimately tied to your own state of mind. You absorb their suffering, and in the author's view, this completely destroys your individual peace and, ultimately, your future. Let's move to our next section, the heavenly utopian vision, and see how this builds into a cosmic journey. The text poses this rhetorical question: why do people yearn for life in heaven? Now, traditionally, you might think of heaven as this place where you're joyfully reunited with your family and loved ones, right? But this text sets up an incredibly unique, highly unorthodox definition of what actually makes heaven a desirable place to be. The essay systematically outlines different heavenly realms, and it explains how moving higher into the heavens requires this escalating erasure of human ties. Think of it like steps. In the 1,000-year world, you spend a short time with your mother, you never know your father, and you have absolutely no siblings or friends. Move up a step to the 10,000-year world, and there are no biological parents at all. Finally, at the highest level, the Celestial Islands continent, there are 0 special relationships between any individuals. Heaven, in this philosophy, is defined by total, complete detachment. So, the author's ultimate conclusion here is shockingly stark. People spend their entire lives keen on building connections, networking, forging friendships, finding lovers. But in the author's view, seeking connections is literally looking for death. By building emotional or interest-based relationships, you're experiencing a spiritual death that actively pulls you away from the peace of the kingdom of heaven. We're arriving at the end of the explainer with one final, highly provocative question straight from the text. Is there a mechanism to live happily and beautifully without having special relationships? It leaves us lingering on the fundamental trade-offs of human connection. Can we truly achieve absolute peace by abandoning the very bonds that make us feel human in the first place? To that ultimate question, the author gives a single, lingering, mysterious affirmation. Yes, there is a mechanism. It's a fascinating conclusion that leaves us wondering what that mechanism could possibly look like in practice, and whether the cost of ultimate peace is simply too high a price to pay. Thank you for joining me to explore this truly unique philosophy. It certainly makes you view your daily text messages a little differently, doesn't it? Until next time, keep questioning and keep learning.